Okay, thanks everybody. Yeah, we'll be a bit of a change in pace. I'm not going to have very many geological sections at all. So we're currently developing our nickel project in Vietnam. We're at the later stages of our definitive feasibility study. And so we're going to present a bit about what we've got through, where we're going to with the project at the moment. And yeah, at the end I'll touch a little bit on our investments in Manitoba and what we're looking to do. So firstly, a little bit about Blackstone. So we're an ASX-listed mining company. Current market cap of about $30 million. We have our top 20 shareholders owning just under 64% of the company. Major shareholders including Deutsche Belaton, Fidelity, Nunja Savetta, with board and management owning about 4%. Our board is made up of Scott Williamson, our MD, is also a mining engineer, Hamish Halliday, a geologist, our chairman, Dr. Frank Berlin, who's also a geologist, Alison Gaines, who is specialist in corporate governance, and also Dan Locker, who is a mining engineer and ex-managing director of Western Areas. So on to Blackstone Minerals and what we're doing. So this is our Tarkwa project we're looking to develop in the north of Vietnam. It's made up of a mine and a refinery, which are separated by about 47 kilometres of river and roads, but we're looking to use that river as the means of transport. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Our resource is about 130 million tonnes at 0.39% nickel for 485,000 tonnes of contained nickel. We've got byproducts of cobalt, copper and PGEs as well. We're looking to make a product which we'll take to our own refinery in Vietnam, where we're going to convert that into a PCAM, precursor cathode active material. Overall, a key aspect of our project is looking to focus on low cost and low carbon. Low cost is obvious in the current nickel market. You can see that the projects that really are surviving are those with low costs, and also low carbon to differentiate us from those like the Indonesian projects. We recognise that the current market is not great, but long term, towards the end of this decade and going forward, we see that there's a structural deficit in the overall supply of nickel, and there's going to be long-term shortfall in nickel supply for multiple decades. We'll also talk a bit about Vietnam. Vietnam's a great place to be looking to develop this project. We have access to renewable power, which is low cost, and a great workforce. So this is where we are in Vietnam. All right, so in the North Vietnam, Hanoi is the political capital. Our projects are to the west. We have our Tarkwa nickel mine in the far north, as well as a refinery a little bit further to the south. We will access this predominantly using a highway coming from the port, and this port is the Haiphong port, and the Haiphong port will then deliver the ore and other concentrate coming from other feed sources to the Hoa Binh port. Hoa Binh will then use the river system to take it up to the refinery, which sits up here, as well as nickel will come down the river from our mine back to our refinery. Now this is really important because logistics in this part of the world can be considered to be difficult, but in the north of Vietnam, the infrastructure is quite well developed. With the highway and this river system, we have a low cost and a very safe and secure means of transporting third-party feed sources from overseas to the mine site and to the refinery, and bringing the nickel concentrate from the refinery, from the mine to our refinery as well. So talk a little bit about our project and what we're going to try and achieve. So this is our integrated business model. We're going to look to bring nickel from our mine in Vietnam, as well as our newly optioned Boboden project in Manitoba, and our other strategic investments to our refinery in Vietnam. We're going to take this material and we can convert it firstly to sulfate and then into PCAM. We're going to look to do this with a partner. We're currently searching for a partner using the global investment bank Jefferies and a specialist bank Cutfield Freeman, who are helping us to secure partners with both local and international. Talking a little bit about our refinery and our project. So nickel mine is here in the northwest. This is the main river system that we're going to use to get down to our refinery. The refinery sits right on the river in a location which is identified and recommended by the local community. We selected this location because it has a very low impact on the community, but also it's sitting right on the river, which gives us great access for the concentrate shipment. It's designed in 2 trains, where we can have one train built first, and it gives us the option to build a second train should we wish to stage the project of development. The DFS study that we're working on currently assumes that they're both built in parallel, but this just gives us some operational flexibility and development flexibility. As I mentioned before, cost is king. Nickel projects around the world, its current price, many of which are very uneconomic. Our costs are sitting at well beneath the current price current supply costs are far beneath the current nickel cost. This is driven by the fact that we have access to, that was a bit too quick. Still going to use this system, I apologise. Low cost hydropower, 6 cents a kilowatt hour. We have low cost of labour at just under $3 an hour. And also we have very favourable tax incentives for the area we're in. We pay 0% tax for the first 4 years, and it scales up to 20% over the following 15 years. Our overall flow sheet is EV focused, producing PCAM products. We have no brownfields retrofit, and we're not making intermediate products of nickel metal or anything along the way. So this allows us to really shortcut the overall flow sheet and minimise any wasted spend on making products which are not relevant for the overall EV market. We've also designed the refinery to be feed agnostic. What we mean by this is the fact that we can feed almost any nickel feedstock into it, and allows us to really take advantage of what the current lowest cost nickel supply is, ensuring that we have long-term viability for our project. And really, to differentiate ourselves from the Indonesian supplier, we've looked to minimise our carbon footprint throughout. On the left is our LCA results. LCA is a life cycle assessment, which was an assessment of the total carbon that's generated for our project per kilo of product we produce. We will produce about 9.8 kilos of carbon for every kilo of PCAM. Now, on the left, you can see here, this is predominantly made up by one bar here, which contributes 4.4 kilos of carbon, and that is due to our third-party feed sources. So we're currently looking to secure and identify feed sources with lower carbon, which will help us to really reduce this. We also have a pathway on the right here, which shows us our strategy to get down to 1.4 kilos. Now, there's a few things that we're looking to do here. Firstly, the easiest one for us to secure is a power offtake agreement. Once we have this power offtake secured with the hydropower providers, we'll be able to reduce this total a further 2.4 kilos per kilo of product. We then, if we were to use nickel sourced in concentrate from Manitoba, from the likes of the Webodum project, we'll be able to reduce this further by an additional 2.5 kilos. There's a few other initiatives that we're looking at as well, but overall, this should let us seek this target of 1.4 kilos of carbon for every kilo of product. The relevance of this is obvious. When we look on the right-hand side here, at 1.4 or 9.8, we are already sitting at one of the lowest carbon footprints in the world for this product. If you were to produce PCAM via conventional pyrometallurgical flow sheet, you're having about 15.7 kilos. But if you look at some of the more higher carbon intensive flow sheets, including the conversion of nickel pig iron using the rotary kiln furnace in Indonesia, you're looking at close to 60 kilos for every kilo of PCAM. So this is where we want to maintain a differentiation of our product from other nickel sources, keeping that low carbon footprint with the low cost as well. Now this here now speaks to our feed agnostic approach. Obviously, we've designed this plant to accept our feed sources coming from Vietnam, but it is also flexible enough to take feed sources from Canada, which have higher MgO content and arsenic content than would typically be accepted in smelters. The hydrometallurgical flow sheet is not sensitive to MgO, and it takes the arsenic, it leaches it, and then makes it a stable form, which then can report to your residue. So we have no sensitivity to this, which allows us to source nickel concentrates from projects which may not have a viable smelter feed, the smelter offtake. But we'll also design the circuit to be able to accept third-party mixed hydroxide precipitate, or MHP, which allows us to then really look at what the cheapest source of nickel is at a given time and bring that in as our potential feed source. Obviously, other third-party concentrates and nickel matte can also be fed, but then our longer-term target is to look to incorporate black mass. Our flow sheet, as it stands, can take black mass but won't recover the lithium. So we're looking to expand the flow sheet to include the lithium recovery, but for now, that's something we're going to look at in the future once we have this project developed. So this is the DFS design for our flow sheet. This was designed by Wood in Perth, Western Australia, and this is 2 trains producing 46,000 tonnes a year of nickel into our PCAM products. I'm not going to talk through it in detail from the flow sheet because it's quite a complex hydromet flow sheet, but if anyone wishes to talk about it, feel free to come see us later. Now we'll zoom out and we'll talk about the mine. The mine sits to the north And the mine is made up of 25 additional late-stage targets. Of these, there's 4 targets that we've really focused on so far. These targets are Ban Kwa, King Snake, Ban Chang, and Ban Phuc. Ban Kwa and Ban Phuc are both disseminated nickel sulfides. King Snake and Ban Chang are both massive sulfides. But Ban Phuc, by far, is the largest project that we have in Vietnam, containing 123 million tonnes at 0.37% nickel for 452 contained tonnes. This current view gives a bit of an overview of what the project looks like at the completion of our pre-feasibility study. This mass out here to the right is our integrated waste storage facility. It's a combination of dry stack, tailings, as well as the mine waste. This allows us to combine both tailings and waste rock into one facility and minimises the overall project footprint. We have an open pit. The open pit has got a strip ratio of 2.9 to 1 and delivers about 64 million tonnes into the mine, into the concentrator, sorry. The concentrator sits here with a port further out on the edge near the river. Since picking up the project, Blackstone has drilled over 100 kilometres. We've defined a very strong resource, which sits right at the top, and it creates a bit kind of like a cup shape. And what this gives us is when we've actually developed our pit, the pit follows the resource down to the point where it takes the whole resource, and when we look at our cutoff grade then does not really drive the pit shape. The pit shape is the same regardless of the cutoff grade, and when we look at the rock when it gets to the surface, it's a simple decision whether it's ore or waste. So onto the resource. The resource is, as I mentioned, 123 million tonnes at 0.37% nickel for 452,000 tonnes of contained nickel, or on a nickel equivalent basis of 523. Unlike NI 43-101, with JORC, we're allowed to add inferred to indicate it together. So I thought of that. So as part of our DFS, we've actually completed over a 1,000 metre long development drive from the existing underground workings through the middle of the pit. What this has given us about 4,500 tonnes of rock that we've put through our existing concentrator to pilot this material and understand in a much greater detail how it will recover as we go through our DFS. So our overall mining inventory was about 64.5 million tonnes for a nickel grade of 0.41 with 262 tonnes of contained metal. This was to be processed through a conventional nickel concentrating flow sheet. We had a simple crushing and coarse ore storage. We then had 2 stages of milling, sag milling and ball milling through to flotation for conventional thickening and filtration in the bottom of the hill. The concentrate then goes in a truck, follows this route to the port on the point before it follows the river back all the way down to the refinery. It's a very simple transportation route to the refinery. We've actually sailed this route multiple times. It is wide and it's very still, given the fact that this is part of the reservoir for the Hua Bin port. There's very little running water, and it's very, very, very stable. Now, our mine and our mill will deliver about 50% of the nickel required for our refinery. So we've looked around the world to identify where we see the best sources of nickel to help fill the final capacity. Now, this is similar to the chart I think was put up earlier, but we've looked at it a little bit differently. We've chosen to focus on this middle band here of 0.3 to 1% nickel. Why we've chosen that is clear. Higher grade, so I should clarify, this overall chart, total resource tonnage is increasing across the bottom, resource grade going up on the left bar, and the bubble size represents the total contained metal. Small projects up here have high grade, but relatively low metal contained, so they don't really turn the dial for us in terms of our project. On the other side, the very large low-grade projects down here, many of which are in Canada, great projects will be developed, but due to the sheer amount of capital required, in addition to the capital we need for our refinery, is not really a target that we can consider. So we chose to focus on this key middle band right here. We have made investments into Lynn Lake and Monago, who both sit in this middle zone here. But more recently, we've secured an option over the Wabodum project, which includes Bucko Lake and Bowden Lake, which we'll talk about briefly before I wrap up today. So these are both in Manitoba, right near Thompson, on the Thompson Nickel Belt. Our investment in Monago to the south and Lynn Lake is really what drew our attention to this area. When we saw the opportunity to secure the Woboden project, we looked at it as a potential to actually to consolidate this region and maybe see what we can actually achieve in producing nickel in this overall zone, and maybe making something which is a centralised location. I'm running out of time, so I could talk about this a lot longer, so I'll try and keep it short. But the Woboden project is made up of 5 resources: Bucko Lake, Boden Lake, M11A, Apex and Halfway Lake. When we first looked at this project, we saw it looking through this lens here as a high-grade, relatively small-scale project. But once our geologists had really got under the belt and really looked at what the real resource looked like, we saw that you could reduce the cut-off grade and change the scale of this project dramatically. Especially if you look at the Bucko Lake and Boden Lake, where reducing the cut-off grade from the 1% cut-off grade down to 0.2 has delivered in excess of 1.3 million tonnes of contained nickel in this project. To reach that 0.2% cut-off grade, obviously you need to be able to have the costs to match it. So this is to consider an open pit type operation or a sub-level cave. We've done quite a bit of work around this to try and understand, is this feasible in the area? Our advice has come back from our mining engineers, has given it in the affirmative that this is definitely a scenario that should be considered. Okay, so I'd just like to wrap up on Blackstone and what we're doing. So we're looking to develop a vertically integrated mining and refining business using hydroelectric power. We've got globally significant nickel sulfide mineral resources across multiple jurisdictions here in Canada as well in Vietnam. And we're looking to develop a project with a first quartile cost position with the world's lowest carbon footprint. We're continuing to develop our partnership-based model where our partners would deliver value for shareholders, as well as integrating a strategy to be delivered into this rising macroeconomic environment as nickel demand re-establishes itself at the back end of this decade. Thank you.